Welcome to Brown Bag History for March 27th, 2024. Today we're seeing some never before shown photographs. So I'll just as we start, I'll acknowledge that the land around Revelstoke and on the Columbia River and its tributaries is the Sinixt homeland and traditional territory. We acknowledge the ties of the Secwepemc, the Okanagan Nation Alliance Silks, and the Tanaha to this land. We acknowledge our use and inhabitation of this land sacred to these four nations. We respectfully honor their traditions and culture. So I titled this talk Teddy Glacier Mine at Camborne, but it's really focusing on one particular photograph collection that we acquired earlier this year or last year. And they were donated by a woman whose grandfather was the photographer of most of these photographs and put together a couple of albums that they donated. So there's actually more than about 230 photographs in the collection, and I'm just showing you a sample of them today. And a lot of them do have to do with the Teddy Glacier Mine and the mines around Camborne. So I've added this map from the book by the Arrow Lakes Historical Society, Milton Parent, just to sort of orient people to where Camborne was, where most of this action was taking place. So you can see from the northeast arm of the Upper Arrow Lake were Beaton, and then there was the road up to Camborne, and then the mines were up above from Camborne. This was a map that came out from a brochure from the 1930s when the mines in the area were being revived, and you can just see a little bit of the area of Teddy Glacier Mine, but you can see where Camborne is, and the Incomaplex River, which is often referred to as a fish river in the early documents. And you can see just how far up it is, up that area. And some of the other minings that were going on in the area. We refer to Meridian Mine a little bit as well in this material. So this is Frederick Richard Blockberger on the right, and his son Walter Blockberger. And Walter is the one that compiled the albums. I believe he took most of the photographs in the albums. And this is a picture of them at a galena outcrop at the Teddy Glacier Mine in 1927. So I was able to find out, I wasn't really aware of the name Blockberger before this collection came in, but I'd heard of Teddy Glacier Mine. What I didn't know is that it was Blockberger who was involved in some of the original mining operations there, and he's the one that named it Teddy Glacier Mine, and I'll explain why in a moment. But Frederick Richard Blockberger was born in Germany around 1866, and he was a printer by trade. They came to the United States where a couple of the sons, including Walter, were born. And then he was up in the Rossland area, probably by the 1890s, and was actually a consular representative of His Imperial Majesty the Kaiser at Rossland in the early 1900s. So he was kind of representing German interests in Canada for a while. He was a printer by trade. So he ended up in Vancouver, where he started publishing a German language newspaper. And he was encouraging people to give their allegiance to Britain rather than to keeping their allegiances with the German to Imperial Germany. That actually got him in some trouble when there was really a consul to the Imperial Germany who established himself in Vancouver and had a big mansion in Vancouver, and he sort of took the newspaper away from Blockberger. There was a court battle ensued. Blockberger was accused of slander and libel against this German count, and lost his fortune in that. But it sounds like he lost and gained a couple of fortunes over his career. But we know from the newspapers that he had mining interests in the northeast arm of Upper Arrow Lake around Comiplex as early as 1900. We see his first mention of being involved there. He had mining claims on Fish River in Comiplex. He was referred to as Professor Blockberger at the time, so I'm not sure where that title came from. But he was, in 1901, it was mentioned that he'd been working all winter on the Kingston group of mines with 12 men. And he sold that group at what was located at what was called Fish River Camp in 1904 for $200,000, which was a huge sum of money back then. So he was definitely dealing in fortunes. And when I say he gained and lost fortunes, we're not joking. He actually did have a lot of money at one point. By then, I really don't see much mention of him again until the 1920s, when he still has mining claims at the Camborne area. And his son Teddy, who's on the left there, was involved in some of the mining work as well. And Teddy actually died in, I believe, in New Mexico in 1922 at the age of 30. He had been born in Iowa in 1892, and he was reputed as being a very talented printer of newspaper printing, and it was a member of the Printers Union in Vancouver, and was also apparently a really good baseball player. But we don't know too much about him other than that. But that's who Teddy Glacier Mine is named after. He's named after Teddy Blockberger. And I didn't know that until we got all of this material and were able to sort through it and do some additional research on the Blockbergers. So really what I'm doing today is I'm talking about the mine, but I'm really wanting to show you these astounding photographs. It was a granddaughter of Walter Blockberger who donated the albums, and she also donated her grandfather's camera that he took all of the photographs with. He had, looked like, a good quality camera. He also has a very good eye. So these are really, really amazing photographs. There's a picture showing their first home at Camborne in 1927. And this is some pictures that were taken in the early 1920s around the area, around in the Camborne area. This was, looks like a collapsed bridge over what was called Mohawk Creek, 6 miles from Camborne, 1921. And surveyors and pack horses at Camborne in 1922. There was, things were, a lot of these mining areas, things sort of come and go. They're sort of wax and wane with the prices of ore and you kind of capital that they're able to get. But in a lot of these mines were bought and sold multiple times too, and they would usually have investors come in from the States and from England. So you'll see pictures of other people that are coming into the area. So that's 1922. Horse and supply wagon at Camborne in 1922. And as you can see, really, really beautifully crafted photographs. So there's Walter Blockberger pointing to an outcrop of silver lead ore at Teddy Glacier in 1927. We have copies of the Minister of Mines reports going back to the 1890s. The 1925 report talks about the Teddy Glacier Mine and said that it was renamed that just the previous year. It had previously been known as the Ritchie Group and had been staked originally by G. Ritchie and G. Edge. Said following their discovery of large boulders of float ore among the rocky debris on the slope below the glacier. And Teddy Glacier Mine had been receding. So I think as the mine receded, they were coming across these deposits. So the property was situated at the head of the middle fork of Sable Creek, 13.5 miles by road and trail from Camborne. In 1924, the glacier retreated considerably, and the ore was discovered in place just below the shallow rim of the glacier at an elevation of about 7,500 feet. So, very high up. It had been acquired by Teddy Glacier Mines Limited in 1924, which was financed by F.R. Blockberger, Frederick R. Blockberger, the father of Walter. It said in that mines report that a trail 4 miles in length was built from the Agnes cabin to a natural camping ground just below the claims, so that it is now possible to make the trip from Camborne to the property without hardship. Well, when you look at some of the pictures, I think there was some hardship involved. That said their first cabin, Teddy Glacier Mine. Look how far up that is. The newspaper from Revelstoke newspaper in September 16th, 1926, it said the Teddy Glacier Group has one of the largest surface showings in the district. An interest in the property has been taken over by Charles G. Bush and Associates of Detroit from F.R. Blockberger of Vancouver, who did retain an interest in the company. And he was said at that time he was doing preliminary work at the mine. So the new trail has been built to the Teddy Glacier and a cabin erected near the showing. A tunnel is being driven to further explore the surface showings, and underground developments will be carried on with. And in September of 1927, some of the Detroit investors, including this Mr. Bush that was mentioned, came to Revelstoke. They were treated by the Board of Trade to a luncheon and driven to the top of Mount Revelstoke, which is what everybody did then if they were visitors in town, and said they'd come to look over their mining interests at Teddy Glacier Mine near Camborne. And Blockberger spoke at the Board of Trade luncheon and said that the claim has been discovered on August 6, 1924. That contradicts that information from the Minister of Mines report, saying that these other prospectors had claimed it previous to that. But he said that he ran into some difficulty with a former partner of his who said he was employing dishonorable tactics, and said that he appealed to the local gold commissioner, who's Mr. Maxwell, and said that he showed fairness and justice and refused to recognize the claims of the unscrupulous partner. Never named the unscrupulous partner, so I'm not sure who that was. But he said that he'd been able to get this capital from Detroit, which was enabling him to continue work in the area, and he was retaining a 1/3 interest in the property. So I'll just show a few photographs showing the area. There's also a note in the paper in 1928 saying that Teddy Glacier was to be explored. And the Detroit investors decided to take immediate steps to explore at depth the strong surface exposures which had been laid here in recent years by the recession of the glacier. And he said, the newspaper said, a contract was let to a Vancouver company to install a power plant on Menhinnick Creek and construct a 7.5 mile pole line to the mine, where a motor-driven compressor will be installed. And there's some pictures of them putting in the equipment, the power line transformers, and the pole line at the end of the 11 mile line. And keep in mind that this is 1928. There's a picture showing there the powerhouse that had a diesel engine and compressor in the building. And we have a lot of this information because Walter Blockberger kindly captioned the photographs in the album. So we actually have quite a bit of detail on what we're actually seeing in the photographs, which is certainly helpful. The newspaper at that time said that the ore at Teddy Glacier Mine was a mixture of lead, zinc, and iron sulfides, carrying values in silver, lead, zinc, and gold. So just show you a few more photographs of the area. Breaking trail after a snowstorm, 1927. Yeah, and that's where they're saying you could get there without hardship. I don't believe that for a minute. It's a man named Tom Boiter, who was a miner at Camborne. He shows up in several of the photographs. There was an area that they referred to as the Golden Stairs, which was, I could think, kind of a switchback up the into the Camborne, into the Teddy Glacier mine. Here's a picture of the campsite in 1928. Men in Agnes Creek Valley on the way to the mine, 1927. Campsite in 1928. It's really that, you know, the photographs are so striking. You know, it's above the tree line there. There's just so barren. It's just a view looking east from the Teddy Glacier mine dump, 1928. And the Camborne to 10 Mile Road underwater at the foot of Eva Hill. Charles Bennett was the brother-in-law of Walter Blockberger, his wife's brother. And there were a lot of mines in the area, and some of them had pretty big operations there and compressors. So this was the Oyster Criterion mine compressor, which was run by a water wheel, 1927. And the Fish River Canyon at low water, and you can see the road on the left, 1928, the road. Is that road still there? Oh, well. And this is the cabin of George Edge. He was the one that was cited as one of the early discoverers of the Teddy Glacier mine. And there's some miners from the area: Merritt Lease, Tom Boiter, and Walter Blockberger. At 1 mile from the Teddy Glacier cabin. And a man named Tom Wilkinson at Camborne, 1928. And the village of Camborne, taken at a bend in the Fish River in Complex, 1929. And you can see some of the cabins, and probably a couple of hotels in that photograph as well. Yeah, we don't have very many photographs of of Camborne, the village itself. And there's Tom Boiter at the Teddy Glacier with the cabin. You see, he has a shovel there. I'm not sure how much progress he was able to make. And this is a group of people with the pack horses at the upper end of the Golden Stairs, switchbacks to Teddy Glacier. And again, this would be like 1928 or so. Yeah. And there's it's a little hard to see, but there's a pack train going down the rock slide. And men on the Meridian Mine Cat behind the Blockberger home at Camborne. And the cabin, and you can see the power pole there. Seems kind of incongruous to see a power pole up 7 to 8, 500. What's that? Yeah. And so this is the pole line crew and horses on the snow-covered Teddy Glacier Trail between Forks Camp and 10 Mile. And Tom Boiter and pack horse on the way to Forks Camp. And George Edge and his horse Colonel on the Fish River Bridge across Fish River above Camborne. And I like the fact that Walter Blockberger named the horse in the photographs. Oh, I spelled his name wrong. That should be Edge. And the caption on this one just said, government mining crews roadblocked at Forks Camp of Teddy Glacier Company, 1930. So Frederick Richard Blockberger died on May 27th, 1929. He was still in his early 60s at the time of his death. But his son, Walter, continued to stay into the area for quite a bit longer and was continued to be involved in work. At the obituary for Frederick Richard Blockberger, it said that it appeared to have a reversal in fortunes just before his death because he was continuing to run his press. He was giving away money and seemed to be in good financial shape at the time of his death. And I think a lot of his mining claims were what kept him going. So this is a photograph of what's called the Silver Dollar Mine, and you can see the tram lines there, Mohawk Creek, 1931. So the rest of the photographs are from the 30s. There continued to be work in the area, and by 1934, there was some British capital had come in and had revived a lot of the work in Teddy Glacier Mine. The newspaper of 1934 said Teddy Glacier Mine to be worked by British capital. Dr. Anton Gray, mining engineer with experience in many countries, including Rhodesia, is in Vancouver and will open up the Teddy Glacier Mine in the Lardo district near Camborne for British interests. And it said that about $75,000 was spent in the mine in 1927 and 1928 by the Charles Bush, who was the Detroit investor. Said the values are principally silver, lead, and zinc. Recent assays gave 66 cents to the ounce in gold. There's a lot of photographs also of the Meridian claims, and this picture is showing the Meridian water pipeline crew on the line grade 1932. That's the pipeline during construction of 1932. And the Meridian Mine Mill under construction in 1933. And the aerial tramways in 1933. And the Pool Creek at Meridian Dam and intake to the pipeline, July of 1933. This is an awesome photo. So the Meridian Mine cat and supplies leaving the beaten dock for Camborne, 1934. And this is its provisions to be flown into Teddy Glacier, stacked on the ice at the end of Beaten Meadows. Now, when I did the talk before, I looked up, or I talked about Camborne previously, and read an interview we have with Avery Gunterman. And he said a crew of men was brought in to clear the deep snow off the mud flats at Beaton. One bag of coal was, and they brought in an airplane to bring supplies in. And he said one bag of coal was loaded onto each wing, about 100 pounds, and a 50 to 100-foot rope attached to each bag. The pilot flew over the mine camp as low as he could and then released the bags. And here's the plane. It was owned by a man named Eric DePensier. And he said they would, drill steel was taken up the same way. One day they got a little careless and put some rod right through the cookhouse roof just before the men were about to enter for a meal. because said sometimes they'd actually sort of tip the plane and sort of just let it slide off the wings of the plane. We actually have a photograph of Eric de Pensier with a plane at Revelstoke. I think in the late 20s, he'd come flown up, I think, from Penticton to come to the Winter Carnival. And the photographs we have of his plane is of it overturned in Big Eddy, because I guess he missed a landing and the plane flipped over. So he was an interesting character, real bush pilot. And this is a picture showing a snow slide that took out 50 feet of a hydro pipeline in 1934. I think it was the winter of 1935, a couple of brothers died in an avalanche on the way up to Teddy Glacier Mine. 35 was a really bad avalanche year. There's another picture showing the Meridian mill at Camborne, 1935. And looking down onto it from above. This was a bunk and cookhouse built by the Selection Trust of London, England in 1935. That was some of the British investors. So they actually had bunkhouses up there at that time. And there's the Meridian Mining Company mill and building showing the tram line and the village of Camborne down below around 1935. Just astounding the amount of infrastructure that they had out there, way out in basically out in the wilderness. That's men and pack horses bringing loads down the rock slide from Teddy Glacier in 1939. So I'm just going to finish up with a few other photographs from the album, not specifically of the mines, but some of the other photographs that he took, and including his family. It was a really interesting photograph, a different view of the Minto that I've ever seen before, taken in 1922. It was a really great photo of the bridge at Beaton in 1920. I like the poses of the gentlemen in the photo. They're looking quite debonair there, like casual. It's a great photo showing some of the houses at Beaton. And these are the children of Walter and Mary Blockberger. The Fred, born in 1925, Elizabeth or Betty, born in 1927, and Dina, also Emma was her real name, but known as Dina, was born in 1930. And that's at Camborne. You can actually see the Meridian Mine building behind them. So those children grew up at Camborne and later at Beaton. And he's got some absolutely lovely photographs of the children at their home in Camborne. This is just a sample. There's tons of them. And great photograph of Fred, Mary, and Betty at the 24-mile ferry around 1930. We don't have a lot of photographs of the 24-mile ferry, but there were two in that collection, this one and one other that I didn't include today. And really cute picture of Fred. I think other pictures show the license plate on the car of 1933. Nice car too. Imagine driving that into Camborne over those roads. And there's Betty. Absolutely love her outfit. And Fred on that. He looks only about like 4 or 5 years old there. And that's the kids looking out the window of their home at Camborne. That'd be in about mid-30s. It had a couple of really good photos in the collection of the tugboat Yale taken at Beaton. It was one of the tugs that operated in that area. And rock slide on the CPR rail near Arrowhead. There's no date on that one, but pretty substantial slide there. And this is a bird's eye view of Nakas, 1913. I'm not sure whether he took that photograph or that was a purchased photograph because it has a stamp in the bottom there. But I'm not sure if that's the Bonington there at the shipyard, or have to check and see if we can figure out what boat that is. And the only photograph I've ever seen at Pingston, the sawmill at Pingston Creek in 1928. And there was a sawmill that operated there for several years. And so that's what we had for photographs. And just stop recording here.